talked about while loops, do while loops, and for loops. But when do we want to use each of these loops? Like if we need to use a loop, when would we want to use a while loop? When would we want to use a for loop? When would we want to use a do while loop? So there's a few things so some of these loops are better at certain things than other loops. So a while loop, remember a while loop is a pre-test loop. So if you need to pre-test if you don't want the loop to run at all, if your condition is false, then you would want to use a pre-test loop. And I'm going to come down and put that on the for loop as well, because the for loop is also a pre-test loop. And remember, the do while loop is a post-test loop. So that means that the do while loop is always going to run at least once, no matter what your condition is. So let's go back to the while loop. So the while loop is a pre-test loop. So that means the while loop only iterates if a certain condition is true. And so while loops are good for, so I'm just going to put good for validating user input. So we've been using while loops a lot for that. So validating user input. So basically you ask the user for something. If the user doesn't enter whatever you want correctly, you go into a while loop and tell the user that they entered the data wrong, and then tell them how to enter it and ask them for them to re-enter it, and the loop will keep running until they enter the data correctly. And as we just saw in the example I just did, while loops are also good for reading a list of data terminated by a sentinel. So a do while loop, remember, is a post-test loop, and this always iterates at least once. So if we want our loop to run at least once, so always iterates at least once. And a do while loop is good for a repeating menu. So if you have a program that's going to run, and then it's going to, so let's say it runs, the first time it runs, it displays a menu, user picks something from the menu, the program runs through whatever option they picked, and then you want the program to go back and display the menu again for the user to pick something else. And so this could be a menu like enter a number, search. We're going to talk about search later, but these are just different things that you might have in your menu, and then quit. So, and then as we saw with the previous program, a do while loop can also be used with a sentinel. And so this program we did previously, it would have been fine to do it with a while or a do while loop. You would have wanted to use a while loop if you wanted to ask for the first value, and then you wanted to keep asking the user, would you like to enter another value? I ended up just combining those into one statement in the do while loop, where I just asked the user to enter a number, so I didn't distinguish if it was the first number or another number. So, but the do while loop can also be used with a sentinel, so a list that's ended with a sentinel. And then the for loop is a pre-test loop. And so remember, the for loop has built-in expressions for initializing your counter variable, testing your variable, and then updating. So in other words, let's say we have int I is equal to 1. So this is our initialization. And let's say we want to see if I is less than 50, and then I plus plus. So in this case, we're saying that we know we want the loop to run 50 times. And so for loops are good for conditions or situations where you know the exact number of iterations. So we know exact number of iterations for our loop. So these are some rough guidelines for when to use a while, do while, or for loop.